There's a buzzing all around, the sounds of thousands of midges and Neek-breekers and lapping, tepid water. Reeds and little brackish pools lay all around. On sunup, the marsh is almost beautiful, but the sunlit waters reveal scum and moss and yet more bugs. Like miniature kingdoms in this swamp world stand the remains of Arnorian forts. There is a statue of one of the old kings, now with moss for a beard, cracked and barely enduring the years of midges and new goblin infestation. A short distance from Bree, just south of the Chetwood, just north of the Great Road, are the Midgewater Marshes. When a band of 4 hobbits and a ranger passed through these marshes, it was not goblins or Nazgul or fell spirits that threatened to munch the well-fed skin from their bones. It was bugs. Lots and lots of nasty midges. What they found, apart from the hungry bugs, was a lot of nothing. Only rushes and a few birds and 2 nights of nasty discomfort. It was hard going. And what spelled relief for them on the 3rd day? Why, the Weather Hills. In sharp opposition to the gross and unwelcoming marshes stand the smooth stone hills that once served as the border of the great kingdoms. Shooting up from the pools and midges, the hills are welcome and dry sight to weary travelers. Beyond, towering over all of its cousins, is Weathertop in the distance. It's Midgewater and the Weather Hills, and you are listening to Beneath Your Feet. Okay, so Midgewater Marsh.
Mm-hmm.
Most exciting place in the Breeland if you love bugs.
You know what is the thing is, and Midgewater Marsh, and as well with the sort of the Western Lonelands. I read the books about once every year and a half.
Yeah.
And every time that I do, I find myself rolling up another alt. And these are the places that stick in my mind the most, both with the movie and with the book.
Yeah,
is Midgewater Marsh and the Lonelands. And a couple of years ago, I just happened to be reading the Lonelands part while I was going through with my main through the Lonelands and through through the Western Lonelands and Midgewater Marsh, and it just connected so much. It was amazing. And The Hobbit as well. I had read, and they mentioned the Lowlands quickly as well in the Hobbits. So, you know, it's an amazing connection. I think I wrote the longest blog post I had ever written at that point about that.
Joining me this week is fellow podcaster, Tolkien enthusiast, and overall good dude, Chris from MMOreporter.com. So what specifically from the books did you feel connected you to this part of the game, to the marshes and the Weather Hills and that border?
Well, you know, it was the description. I can't remember exactly the words, but I felt, you know, I was just reading their movement towards Weathertop, and here I am going in the game, the same thing, and I'm kind of looking around, and all of a sudden Tolkien's words start popping into my head, and looking around, and that sort of panorama was I'm thinking, oh wow, this is what Frodo and Sam, this is what they were seeing.
Yeah. So
it was it really connected me. It was the visual, it was the feel of it, the visual and the feel of it that really got me.
Definitely, and they made it work for the game too, because if they did it to scale, then we would be wandering for days, literally, in the game. And they did a really good job of making it feel, like you said, as if you're there in the Lonelands and in the Weather Hills and in the marshes, without it taking, you know, days and days to get through like it took them.
Well, and it, you know what? Even with the scale that they went with, it still feels like a horrible slog through a marsh as you go through there. They really got that feel of it, because really, although, you know, you were talking about Midgewater Marsh, I still don't really love playing in that area, but I think that's the point.
Right, you shouldn't love it.
You shouldn't go in there thinking, wow, I want to live here.
Yeah, let me set up a tent.
Yeah. Where's my campfire?
So do you think that's maybe the part, you know, you said you love it, but you don't love it because you're not supposed to love it. Do you think that's maybe why you enjoyed that so much in LOTRO, because maybe they nailed it in that sense?
Everybody likes to suffer a little bit, right?
Just a little bit.
And I think this is suffering that we go through that makes us feel like we're connected to Frodo just a little bit more.
I love the part in the books where Sam says, effectively, what do they eat when they can't get hobbits? And I think they did a good job with the Neek-breekers and all the bugs and stuff too, without making it too annoying. Like I think of the old forest in the early builds of the game, where the trees would shift and it was just hell trying to get in and out of there.
Yeah.
And then they changed it to make it more user friendly, but it's kind of like that with the Midgewater, in that you do have little bugs that bother you and you do have the Neek-breekers, but it's not such a nuisance that you don't want to be there.
That's right.
In both the Weather Hills and the Midgewater, we hear echoes of ages past. Through its 1,000 or so years of existence, from the 800s to 1900s of the Third Age, Arthedain used the Weather Hills as the border of its sister kingdom of Rudour. As in the wars of antiquity here in the primary world, the border shifted as power swayed between the two, when their many wars meant the taking and retaking of Aman-Sul, or Weathertop, at the end of the range of hills. They are windswept, sparsely treed, and home to many wild animals, as carnivores migrated here to feast on the other animals sustained by the short grass. Intertwined with this natural existence are the remains of the many fortresses and walls that were once the front lines of the many skirmishes between the two kingdoms of men. In the northerly part of the hills bordering the North Downs is the Gondrin, one of the few ruins that remain intact. It is a circular arched stone building that remains untouched by the many orcs who have come into these hills after the passing of the hobbits and their pursuit by the Nazgul. As you move westwards, the brown savanna-like coloring of the lone lands transitions into the nurtured green grass of the Bree side of the Weather Hills, nourished by the many streams and falls that feed the marshes below. The Martians have ruins of their own as well, a reminder that at one point, perhaps, this was more than just a home for midges.
And going through it, and I remember getting to the ruins in the middle, the Marshwater Fort, and getting to that area and the whole spider enclave that's there, and thinking, whoa, this is a perfect place. If I was gigantic mutant spiders, this is where I would set up shop.
Right.
Right? I've got all these bugs that are going to keep all the annoying people out, and the ones that get through are going to be good enough to be a good meal.
Right, that's good. So thinking from a spider's perspective.
That's right.
Did you feel like the ruins aren't mentioned in the book? Mm-hmm. But did you felt that they fit pretty well?
Turbine has done a pretty good job of extrapolating what they can and expanding upon stuff that's not mentioned. And just like you were talking with Golden Star a few episodes ago about Evendim and about sort of the expansion of that zone, I feel the same way about Midgewater Marsh. Is that it's meant to be this horrible start or continuation, I guess. I don't know. It always feels like the journey kind of started at Bree, to me at least. That's where it really, because now it was actually dangerous up until except for this whole old forest stuff. But you get to Bree, and this is where okay, now we've got Aragorn. Now that the story's really beginning. Now the danger is really upon them.
Yeah, because the Barrow Downs, the old forest, are horribly dangerous, but it feels a little bit more like a fairy tale. And then once they get out of there, once they kind of leave Tom Bombadil and they get to Bree and Strider, it starts to feel more like this is getting real.
Yeah.
As real as fantasy novel can get.
The bleep is getting real now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's it feels like this start to the danger, like this place that could swallow you whole.
Right.
And very many of my characters have almost stalled out there, so they have almost been swallowed whole.
Yeah. I think I recently started playing through with another character, leveling my, whatever millionth alt, and I think that was actually the first place where the character was defeated. Where I didn't get the Undying title, but it's because, well, for different reasons. Partly because I play like a kamikaze, but also because it is as you said, if the journey starts in Bree, then Midgewater is kind of really the first danger that you face
first
coming
test.
out of there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, test your mettle here.
There you go.
If you can make it through this, you can make it through anything.
As Strider and the hobbits leave the marshes and make for Weathertop, it is said that all that day they plodded along until the cold and early evening came down. The land became drier and more barren, but mists and vapors lay behind them on the marshes. A few melancholy birds were piping and wailing, until the round red sun sank slowly into the western shadows. Then an empty silence fell. The hobbits thought of the soft light of sunset glancing through the cheerful windows of Bag End far away. At the day's end they came to a stream that wandered down from the hills to loose itself in the stagnant marshland, and they went up along its banks while the light lasted. It was already night when at last they halted and made their camp under some stunted alder trees by the shores of the stream. Ahead there loomed now against the dusky sky the bleak and treeless backs of the hills. That night they set a watch, and Strider, it seemed, did not sleep at all. The moon was waxing, and in the early night hours a cold gray light lay on the land. And so they came to the Weather Hills. So you go through the marshes, you see the ruins, you fight your way through these goblins who are infesting the marshes. You make your way through the Neek-breekers and the bugs and the water and the slop, and then you reach these hills called the Weather Hills. So we talked about how you can kind of see Weathertop from there, and you lose the claustrophobia of the Midgewater Marsh, and you enter into this very open lone land. What do you like about that? Is it kind of the relief after coming through the marshes, or is it just the fact that you're coming upon some well-known places like Weathertop?
It's a visual thing too, right? Because there's that visual effect when you're in the marshes where your visibility is less, and it's almost like a fog effect. And then you come out and you go up into the Weather Hills, and all of a sudden that effect fades away. Yeah. And your visibility is increased again, and it's like, oh, I can finally breathe. Like the stench is gone, right. and now all of a sudden it's beautiful. It really is.
It is.
It's this almost semi-arid desert-like landscape almost that sparse trees and lots of rocks.
Yeah, it's like as much as close as you could come to a savanna while trying to make it feel like Europe.
Right. Exactly. And it's just this feeling of relief, that you get coming out of that and up to the weather, and then you see Weathertop, and it's like, oh my god, it's weather. Oh, I have to go there. I have to climb that.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it, but somehow, regardless of the graphic setting or the power of your computer, you can still see Weathertop just about anywhere in that zone. Have you found any secret spots or I don't know, paths less traveled in Midgewater or in the Weather Hills?
It's actually coming down, and this is before they put that horse path in from the North Bree Fields,
right, from Cyrodian's cabin
to Candaith,
right. That cut through
that area. When you go north a little bit, I think I've probably only ever been there 2 or 3 times ever with any of my characters.
It's very well hidden.
Yeah, I've never ever found a reason to go there, and I think the first time I really went through there was after they had added that horse path, and I went back with Wardazar, my main, and although I didn't need any sort of questing there, I still took the horse path because I wanted to explore and to see this area. And it looks really, really cool.
Yeah,
and it's
it does.
Probably, I think less than 10% of the population has probably seen it.
Yeah. I love spots like that too, because it almost feels like your own little, fort or whatever. Right. But it's like there's a little bit of a ravine and these bridges that go across and these little channels and things.
But here's a suggestion to all the low-level players that are maybe thinking of going there. There's some pretty high-level mobs in there, so if you go there, you're probably gonna die. Just putting it out there, unless you're taking that horse path.
Yeah. Have you got any other ideas that might heighten our appreciation of these areas?
It is amazingly rewarding and what's the word I'm looking for? A great sense of satisfaction when you get your Sicklefly and Neek-breeker deeds, because you've killed so many of those darn things. You just, yes, finally.
I've depopulated the marshes.
It really feels satisfying. It really just, maybe it's just, my need for a murderous rampage, but it just feels great. I hope that anyone that goes through this zone doesn't skip it, because it's so easy with the variety of content that you've got now with skirmishes, with everything that's there, that you could skip over it. But there's just something to be said about going through this area and that whole claustrophobic feeling with that fog effect that they've got, that just makes coming out of it all that much more satisfying. So I hope that everybody goes through it with at least one character.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
This has been episode 11 of the Beneath Your Feet podcast. An extra special thanks to Chris for heading through the marshes with me this week. Make sure to listen to his many, many high-quality podcasts at mmoreporter.com. If you'd like more information on the Weather Hills and the Midgewater Marshes, along with screenshots and links to this episode's music, check the show notes on my blog at www.lotrobeneathyourfeet.com. From there, you can view old screenshots and episodes, follow on Facebook or Google+, and subscribe on iTunes. As always, I'll be announcing the forthcoming episode on the blog next week, so once you hear which lands I will be exploring next, please send any questions, comments, screenshots, poems, songs, recipes, old wives' tales, short stories, anything at all, to shipwreck@lotrobeneathyourfeet.com. Stay tuned, and thank you again for listening. My name is Shipwreck, and we'll see you next time when we go beneath your feet.